to jump right into the questions now. So I just want to start with one around, we've heard a lot about certification. Wayne, you talked about challenges. What role can certification play in helping you with your challenges?
Certification is a start, but it's not the end. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of folks coming to us. Claudia has come to us, Susanna has come to us, said, please test our products in your processes. Well, we'd like to know that it's been certified first, at least we know there's a chance that it's going to degrade. But the reason it's not the end is that unfortunately, there are lots of different compost processes that are in use all around the continent. There are a variety of different anaerobic digester technologies that are out there. And so what we have to do is we literally have to test for ourselves, will the products degrade in our facilities? So that's the challenge that we face. We certainly need certification programs, we need standards. Unfortunately, our end of the industry, the processing industry, is not sufficiently developed and standardized that we can have a guarantee that if it's got this certification that it absolutely will work in our process. And that's not just limited to harvest. I would say that the same is true of all the other organics recyclers here in the region.
Great. Susanna, can you just very quickly respond to that, and then we're going to go to Toronto.
Yeah, I believe that it's actually a two-way street. I think that in addition to materials having to meet a high standard for how they're going to scientifically or chemically go back into the environment, I think that our systems providers, and that's all of them, they need to take an understanding that their systems may need to have some adjustments made or some developments or improvements to be able to capture some of these organic packaging opportunities in the context of diverting food waste. I'm not advocating for packaging, compostable packaging for an oil can. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, shouldn't go into the compost. But we need to find that perfect blend between the materials and systems, and they both need to be able to adapt to work together.
Thank you. Let's go to Toronto. Robin, are you there? Can you give us a question from Toronto?
I am here. Can you see me?
Great.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. So we have a question for Harvest Power. You mentioned black plastic bags. Do you think clear plastic bags would make people think twice?
Absolutely. It would be a big help. There's a saying, out of sight, out of mind. And also, you know, if things are hidden, people will do stuff. But if you have clear plastic bags, that would help enormously.
Great, thank you. And further, then building on that question, then perhaps we could just jump over to you, Keith, with the one question that's come up. What is the point of engineering biodegradable, flexible plastics when bags and wrap are the primary contaminant in waste streams for recycling and organics?
Good question. So first part of clarification, so BSF doesn't use, we tend to not use the word biodegradable, right? We like to use something that is measurable, something science-based. So compost is something that is something measured against a standard. So the word biodegradable itself is something we don't tend to use, and the industry should be careful with. At what stage in the process does the bag or the wrap become the contaminant? It's interesting because we're the raw material supplier. I'm not actually making bags. So I would think once it gets to the composter, you know, depending on the heat, the turns, the kind of level that compost is turning it, is probably where it would become the contaminant. I would think Harvest Power might know that a little better than me, but from a raw material side, that's what I've seen. And if there's a way to color the bags to make it easier for the consumer, maybe that's an option too. But I'm not sure which part of the chain that becomes a contaminant, to be honest.
Okay. And over to you, Claudia, a question has come up that I think is a lot of people are thinking about this is, shouldn't we be actually encouraging people to simply move away from single-serve items rather than trying to satisfy their desire with trying to make these materials more compostable?
I think we believe that, well, we went and did a life cycle analysis for that very reason. We wanted to get a scientific assessment of what impact single serve is really having versus the emotional part of it, which is we see the waste, so we think it's bad. So the life cycle analysis said to us, there is food waste reduction here, and this can be a benefit to us. And if you think about the world economies and what's happening with more and more of them jumping onto the coffee bandwagon, eventually coffee is going to become more and more in short supply. So if we can reduce how much of it is being wasted, I think that's a good thing. And so from a food waste point of view, I think the answer is no. And then the other bottom line is consumers love the convenience and they love the quality. I mean, this is a worldwide phenomena that is going around the world. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to stop that trend when consumers are seeing real benefit in what they're getting. And you can see from the growth numbers that it's not a trend that's about to stop anytime soon.
So we have to deal with it. Okay, maybe jumping back to Keith and Susanna, there's a question that's come up around, it's one thing to make these materials biodegradable, but do we have a sense of the materials that are being produced that are biodegradable? How many of those are we actually capturing and managing through facilities like Wayne's?
So that's primarily why we're looking at stadiums as a closed loop place to start. So we can manage exactly what goes into that system and what comes out. And it's easier to control. Within municipalities, yeah, it's hard. I mean, when you go to a waste management at the end of the value chain and you ask them what the biggest issue is, and Wayne showed the pictures of what it does to a packaging, a paper machine that's grinding up paper, it gums it up. So if we can control the bins, educate the consumer, be consistent with our messaging, I think it'll be easy to control. How much of it's going in, it's going to depend on the region that you're at. I don't know if you have something different.
Susanna, you must try to track this.
He's absolutely correct. And we've worked with vendors who have closed loop systems as well. And we've also worked with vendors that are extremely committed to their sustainability metrics. So you can't improve or you can't work on what you can't measure. And some of our vendors have done such incredible jobs of measuring. When they got to the point where their overall garbage bin only had, and this is for the entire facility, and they do a significant volume, it was only 8% packaging. And when they changed a design element of their system for their consumer, and correspondingly, they saw an increase in contamination. And so I think with committed vendors and people who really understand what it's required to build sustainability, not only can you get some great rates in terms of diversion, but then you can also look at how to improve those rates, what the impacts are of negative actions, how design impacts all of these features, and how you can educate the consumer.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's go back to Toronto. Robin, are you there? Can you give us another question from Toronto?
I am here. I have a question for Club Coffee. Will your innovative packaging be available to other competitors? And what place does this play in the greater good for the planet?
I only heard the first part of
Are
the
your
question.
compostable pods going to be available to other companies, like across the board?
So yes, the answer is yes. We are a co-packer, co-manufacturer, so we package products for people, brand owners other than ourselves. So the technology is available. And what we've said, our commitment as a company is the technology that we've developed around these bioplastics, which are quite unique, we are happy to work with others who are interested in applying the same solution, regardless of what format of single-serve coffee or tea or any other single-serve format they'd like to get into, because we think it's a pretty revolutionary and a helpful way of addressing some of the waste out there. So yes.
Great, thank you. Wayne, let's ask this question of what about the green compostable bags that are meant to go in the kitchen catchers and go into the organic stream? How are you feeling about those? You don't want them?
We really do not want them at this time. It's the same problem that we've been dealing with. With the exception, and I think it's really great working with the stadiums and arenas where if you can control everything in there, and we know that everything that is coming out, whether it's the bags or the cutlery and so forth, were compostable, If there's that control at the top end before it even goes into the stadium, that's great. The issue on these green bags at the post-consumer level is, we really can't tell the difference, and we can't have equipment that, it's a green bag, so it's okay, but it's a blue bag, it's not okay. It just doesn't work. So that's why we're encouraging in this region, for your kitchen bins, line it with newspaper, and then when you take it out, if you put it in a brown paper bag, all that paper will compost very nicely, and so that is our preferred solution.
Great, thanks. I think that leads us nicely into, there's a few questions that have come up that revolve around education. So Keith, how did you educate the people coming into the stadiums to actually properly participate in that program? And then to the other panelists, how do we improve education in general to get people to better understand how they can properly participate in these programs?
Yeah, sure. It was a lot of fun. Fan engagement. So we basically developed a superhero, Kid Compost, right? So Sustainable Saturdays, every Saturday during the season, we did trivia contests with the fans around recycling. It wasn't just compost, it was recycling, it was composting, it was sustainability in general. We asked these trivia questions and then encouraged the fans to go to one of the zero waste bins within the Safeco field. And at that zero waste station, there was a volunteer from Campfire USA that would help the fan decide, or just look at the signage and determine what was the right place to put their waste. And then at the seventh inning, the fan that won got a Kindle and a signed ball by King Felix. So it was incentivized, and again, it changed every week, every Saturday. So it was really just engaging them on this trivia side and kind of walking them literally through the steps of how to get rid of their waste properly.
Great, thank you. That's very interesting. Any other comments? We're going to go back to Toronto in a second, but any other comments on, I'm thinking, Susanna, you must have comments around the whole education part, because that's pretty critical, I think, to your programs.
Absolutely. And I think that on a national level, and even on a North American or Western cultural level, we need to be working on the same set of knowledge. The chemistry is standardized. There's not a different set of chemistry rules that live in Europe as there are compared to Orlando as there are to here. It's all the same chemistry. So if business and industry can start to understand that chemistry, we can develop messaging that takes into account our system limitations, but sets the stage for the cultural change that we're moving into. And it gives people the ability to make those informed decisions.
Great. Thank you. Wayne, I think you have a comment.
Just a quick add-on to that. I think it's important for all of you out there to understand that you truly are at the North American leadership point on public education around organics recycling. I go all around the US and Canada, and I am constantly pointing to other jurisdictions. Go to look at the Metro Vancouver website, figure out how they're doing public education and research. You've got an agency here that's taking a tremendous leadership position that I don't know of any better one in North America. But they can't do it alone. They need the help of the entire community, businesses, non-for-profits, schools, and so forth. So please work with the great people at Metro Vancouver. There's a lot to be done.
Hear, hear. Well done. Claudia, I know you must have a comment on this, because it's obviously critical. It's one thing to make your coffee pods compostable, but how do you make sure they don't just end up in the garbage?
Right. So start with one point, which is start with the end in mind. And when we develop this product, anyone who's seen a K-Cup or a tea disc or an espresso capsule, this product is instinctively and intuitively different looking. So think about the simplicity in design that really differentiates you and makes it easy for consumers to understand what to do. And then absolutely, we need to be committed to actually educating and communicating what the differences are. There's probably people sitting out there saying, but composting isn't that prevalent, and so how do consumers actually know what to do and gain access to it? Actually, if I remember the statistics right, over 50 and closer to 60% of Canadians have access to some form of composting. And so we've made sure that wherever that is and however that is, whether it's leaf and yard or traditional industrial composting, that consumers, that our product will work in that context and consumers can access it that way. So,
Great, thank you. Robin, are you there in Toronto? If we go back to you for the very last quick question.
Great. So we've heard some great examples from the presenters on the panel, and I wanted to ask if there's any other organizations or businesses you would say are doing material innovation well, and how can we scale up these models?
So I'm involved also in the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. Again, brand owners, raw material suppliers that get together and educate and talk about, you know, how to label, how to recycle labels, and again, just try to get consistent messaging and use best practices. So Sustainable Packaging Coalition is one.
Great. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, you've got Sustainable Packaging Coalition, you've got the National Zero Waste Council, you've got PAC-Next, which is the Canadian sustainable arm of PAC. And then one of the other things that I would put out for the public to get engaged is there are a number of grassroots organizations that are looking at organics diversion, sustainability issues, composting. They are an amazing resource, and these are people who are truly committed to change at the personal level. And it all starts with us individually. And going green is a phenomenon that is from the ground up. It is not from the top down. So these local organizations, these community groups, engage in them, and let's support them.
Great, well said.
I also heard a lot of talk earlier about universities, work with universities. As we can educate the designers that are coming up about designing for end of life, that helps. I mean, BSF does a lot of work with Clemson, MSU, RIT, and I heard some other schools in Canada. So I think as we can, you know, guide those new engineers and designers coming into the workforce, I think it's going to help, you know, later in the chain.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that has come to the end of this session. And building on what organizations are doing, the National Zero Waste Council actually is going to be having a webinar on exactly this topic in November. And so you can stay tuned for that. And I want to thank our panelists very much. I think you'll be here for the day, so hopefully there'll be some further discussion. I am sure that is not the last we're going to hear of this topic. It's a very critical one. It's a very interesting one. And certainly raises a lot of questions that I think we need to discuss and work on collaboratively. So thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you very much to all the great questions that came up and led to this great discussion. And so with that, I will thank you all.